Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to take a look at my top 15 favorite new releases of 2024 so far. Well, according to the Iron Maiden calendar, we are now in the month of June. Nico looks pretty psyched about that. Time of recording, to be exact, is June 10th, so we're more or less about halfway through 2024 now, so I thought it was about that time of year to take a look back at, some of the best releases thus far, my personal favorites here, so everyone's going to have different picks, but these are just my top 15 personal favorite releases of 2024 so far, so let's get started. Coming in at number 15, I'm going to go with Hopiumforthemasses by Ministry. Solid Ministry record here. At this point in their careers, Ministry and Al Jourgensen in particular are not, reinventing the wheel. They're not doing anything that rivals their best work, but still releasing solid albums here, and Hopiumforthemasses is a good record as a follow-up to Moral Hygiene from 2021. I dig it. There are some solid songs on here, like BDE, Just Stop Oil, It's Not Pretty, New Religion, so there's some good stuff on here. Cult of Suffering as well. I enjoy it, and, again, I know this is not top-shelf Ministry, but I'm a fan of Al Jourgensen, pretty much everything he does at this point, so really enjoying, these last few Ministry albums, because, to be honest, I don't know how many Al Jourgensen has left. He's, said that he's preparing to shut down Ministry for a while now, although he's been saying that for years, so you never know which Ministry album is going to be their last, and so I'm just enjoying each release here by Ministry at this point. Even though it's not their best work, it's still pretty solid in my opinion, and wanted to include it here on the list. Getting us started at number 15, gotta go with Hopiumforthemasses by Ministry. At number 14, I'm gonna go with Humanoid by Accept. Pretty much exactly what I expected from Accept at this point. There's one of those bands where if you've heard one album, chances are you've heard them all, but, the music is great, so why change the formula, right? It's amazing, though, the band can keep putting out great album after great album, even now with only one original member, that being Wolf Hoffman. And then you have Mark Tornillo, of course, on lead vocals here. Still sounds great, belting it out on this record, which, sounds killer in my opinion. The guitar work is superb as well, and some standouts for me on this album include Diving Into Sin, Humanoid, the title track is great, Frankenstein as well, Nobody Get That Alive, probably my favorite song from the record, South Side of Hell to close out the album here. Accept did it again, another great album from the Mark Tornillo era of the band, and I'm seeing Accept live later this year with KK's Priest. Can't wait to hear some of these songs live, so for number 14, gonna go with Humanoid by Accept. Number 13, Clear Cold Beyond by Sonata, Arctica. It's power metal, it's proggy, every song stands out in my opinion. There's not a skippable track on here, and there are some lyrical themes that carry over throughout the record, although I wouldn't say it's a concept album per se, but this is great. The new era of the band here, combining a modern edge with their old school sound. The guitar work sounds great, the vocals, of course, the operatic vocals by Tony Kakko are killer, and, I really like the drumming on the track California as well, so just all around a great album. Like I said, all hits, no misses here, no skippable tracks, all killer, no filler. Number 13 on the list, gonna go with the new one by Sonata, Arctica, Clear Cold Beyond. Number 12, let's go with Anno Domini by Black Sabbath. Technically, it's a box set, I know, but I'm going to count it anyway here on this list because I'm really glad the Tony Martin era of Sabbath is finally getting the attention it deserves, and hopefully now, with these new remasters, and of course the Forbidden remix, the brand new remix that gave the album an entirely new sound, hopefully now it's, these albums are exposed to a wider audience, because there's a lot of really underrated stuff on those 4 records that are featured here, those being, of course, Headless Cross, Tear, Cross Purposes, and Forbidden, and I never got to unbox it here on the channel. I did do a review of the remasters when they dropped. I listened to them on Spotify before my copy arrived, and just wanted to get the overall feel for the sound and how they compare to the OG mixes, but now my copy of the box set has arrived now, and I listened to it on my Bose speakers, and so that was great. Finally got to hear them, cranked up really loud, and that was awesome, but I wanted to unbox it here on the channel briefly, so Anno Domini by Black Sabbath, the Tony Martin years highlighted here, those 4 albums, and you open it up here, and you first and foremost here, the contents of the box set. So you have this sheet of paper here that tells you what's inside. Comes with 4 CD Super Deluxe Edition here, 3 original albums newly remastered, and the new Tony Iommi remix of Forbidden, 1989 Headless Cross Tour replica concert book, 60-page book with photos, artwork, and liner notes, and a Headless Cross poster. So let's dive into it here. First off, we have the booklet here, 60 pages. It has some really cool pictures, as well as a lot of really interesting liner notes and quotes from past band members, part of this lineup here. So that's really interesting. I read through the whole thing. It's definitely, something that I found to be very interesting. I learned a lot as well. Also here you have the replica tour guide from 1989, the tour book here for Black Sabbath on the Headless Cross tour, which is really cool. You can see some of the band members here. This is a great little piece of Black Sabbath history to have a replica of, so I enjoyed going through that. You have the Headless Cross poster as well, which I'm not going to unfold the whole thing, but it's the album cover, so you guys can kind of get a feel for it there. Some people, they take their box sets and they hang up their posters. I don't do that. I just want to leave all the contents inside, but now we've arrived at the CDs themselves. Of course, Headless Cross Tier, Cross Purposes, and Forbidden, and, the packaging, I think, for the CDs could have been better, but, what's inside is fantastic here. I think Headless Cross and Tier sound really powerful and revamped with the remasters. Really in-your-face sound, I think is great, although I thought Forbidden definitely was, the one that stood out the most. I think I definitely enjoyed the remasters of Tier and Cross Purposes, as well as Headless Cross listening on my speakers, but the one that really does stick out is Forbidden here, and that's the one that I'm going to talk about the most, which is the fact that it's just an entirely different sounding album now. They definitely did a lot here in the studio. Tony Iommi did a great job here of reworking this record here so it sounds clearer. It definitely packs a much better punch now, and you can't say Forbidden has bad production anymore. I mean, this album does have its faults in other respects, but production is not one of them, so it definitely does accentuate some of the better parts and ideas on this album. So I do enjoy tracks now, like, The Illusion of Power, Get a Grip is much better, I Won't Cry for You, Guilty as Hell, Rusty Angels, Forbidden. So the songs are definitely improved, and I can gravitate towards them a little bit more now, but ultimately I'm just really happy that, the Tony Martin era of Black Sabbath is getting the attention it deserves, and it's finally getting a proper box set release, which Tony Martin had been talking about for years, but it seemed like he was, just as much left in the dark as all of us. So I'm really glad, for him as well, that this era of Sabbath is finally getting a spotlight, and, when it comes down to Black Sabbath albums that badly needed remasters, this album, Forbidden, I should say, and this entire, series of records with Tony Martin on lead vocals badly needed some attention, so I'm really glad that it finally got it. Next, at number 11, we have Happiness Bastards by the Black Crowes. Their first proper studio album in 15 years, since 2009, shows that the Robinson brothers have not lost a step at all. It's classic Black Crowes here, what's old is new again, right? And this is exactly the album they needed to make, bringing their classic sound into this new era of the band. The new stuff comes off great live, too, and after 15 years, it was definitely an album worth the wait. A great return to form for the Black Crowes following the 2019 reunion, coming in at number 11 here. Gotta go with their new record, the first, like I said, in 15 years. Breaking into the top 10 now with 10,000 Volts by Ace Frehley. Ace's involvement in the songwriting process for this album might be disputed, but this is still a darn good Ace Frehley album in my opinion. Probably Ace's best solo record since Trouble Walkin' from 1989, and obviously Ace is not what he used to be, but he can still rip a great guitar solo in my opinion, and it's a fun listen. If you like Ace Frehley, you're gonna like this album. It's that kind of a thing, very fun album here, and I really enjoy standouts like 10,000 Volts as a classic Ace Frehley track. Walking on the Moon is fun. Cosmic Heart, Back Into My Arms Again is a song that's been demoed since going back to the Frehley's Comet days, so I'm really glad that finally made its way onto an Ace studio album here. Fighting for Life is fantastic, probably my favorite song from the record. Stratosphere, Up in the Sky. There are a lot of really fun and interesting songs on here, so is it Ace's best album? Probably not, but definitely his best in many years, and when it comes down to it, I'm just really happy that Ace Frehley is still making new music, Kiss are retired, and so Ace Frehley is kind of the last man standing now, and so you can't take these releases for granted. 10,000 Volts by Ace Frehley, a really fun album for sure, getting us started in the top 10. At number 9, we have Saviors by Green Day. Now, for anybody who's followed my channel for a while, you probably know that I'm not a Green Day fan, at all, so I'm as surprised as anybody that this actually made my list, but I gotta be honest here, even for all the flack that I've given Green Day, in the past, I gotta say, the band hit a home run with Saviors, their best record in at least a decade and a half as far as I'm concerned. Saviors definitely sounds like a throwback at times to their classic 90s stuff, but it also has the maturity of a band that's been around now for 30 years, so I think it's a great balance. The production is great too, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of Billy Joe Armstrong's vocals and his voice in general, I do, really enjoy this album. I don't mind his voice on tracks like The American Dream Is Killing Me or Corvette Summer, Dilemma, Father to a Son. Some really great standout tracks on here, and I enjoy it quite a bit, even though I'm not a Green Day fan. I was pleasantly surprised with this record, and even more surprised that it made my top 10, but for number 9, gotta go with Saviors. Number 8, From Hell I Rise by Kerry King. It's his debut solo album with his new band. It's as thrashy as I expected here. It definitely sounds a bit like Slayer light. Kerry King really trying to hammer home the fact that he was part of that cornerstone of the Slayer sound, right? The guitar duo of him and Jeff Hanneman helped to define that Slayer sound for so many years, but to call it Slayer light is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you really can't have too much Slayer, but it definitely does sound at times as well, kind of like Slayer meets Death Angel with Mark Osegueda on lead vocals here, and he definitely sounds his best on this record when he's just being himself and not trying to sound like Tom Araya, but this is a great lineup here, kind of a supergroup of, thrash metal musicians here. Kerry King sharing guitar duties with Phil Demmel, like I said, Mark Osegueda on lead vocals here, and Paul Bostaff on the drums. It's a heavy, aggressive album from top to bottom, and I've heard some people give it negative reviews upon its release, but I really dig it. I think some standout tracks on here like Where I Reign, Residue, Idle Hands, Crucifixation, Everything I Hate About You, Two Fists, Rage, and Shrapnel, are definite, highlights for me. And looking at this album here from top to bottom, I mean, there's not a bad song out of the bunch. It's definitely, lyrically, it's definitely a Kerry King album. All right, his lyrics are very, recognizable, but in the sense that this is an album where Kerry King's trying to make a statement, it definitely does provide that kind of statement record feel that you want. And so I'm hoping on his next studio album he continues to, kind of evolve past this and go for a more unique sound. But for the debut album here, Slayer meets Death Angel with a very heavy emphasis on the Slayer sound. Not bad at all, in my opinion. Coming in at number 8, going to go with Kerry King's debut solo album, From Hell I Rise. Great stuff here, in my opinion, although some people gave it a mixed response. Number 7, The Other Side of Mars by Mick Mars. This was Mick's first solo album since his ugly departure from Motley Crue, and just like Kerry King's album was a statement record, this was a statement from Mick that he's not going anywhere, and he also showed just how important he was to the Motley Crue sound and to the band. I mean, just go ahead and listen to this album compared to the most recent Motley Crue song. It's night and day, in my opinion, in terms of quality. It's guitar-centric and just classic Mick Mars through and through here, but also really interesting to see Mick pursue a more modern metal direction on this album, which I thought was interesting. And so I know Mick has said he's been writing. He's writing, working on a second album now, so really interested in what he comes out with in the future. But for a debut album, really great stuff here, and kind of similar to what I was talking about with the Kerry King record. A great statement album, a great starting point for a solo debut here, so I really enjoy it. And I enjoy that kind of modern metal sound that he incorporated on here, really showing his range as well as his worth and his value and how much he's missed now in Motley Crue. So even though John 5 is great, nobody can fill Mick Mars' shoes, and he proved that here with The Other Side of Mars, number 7 on the list. Number 6, I'm going to go with Self-Titled by Ihsahn, his 8th studio album. Great Norwegian black metal musician here, released back in February. It was self-produced as well by Ihsahn, and he plays pretty much every instrument on the record except for drums and violin. And this album once again proved what we already know, and that's that he's one of the most creative, modern metal musicians out there. I love the experimentation on here, really taking chances in the studio and pushing the boundaries, showing off his range in a major way on this record. Just some mind-bending stuff, some great sounds here sonically, really a tremendous record here. Some of my favorites on the album include Pilgrimage to Oblivion, Hubris and Blue Devils, At the Heart of All Things Broken, and The Distance Between Us are some of my favorites. I think side 2 is stronger than side 1, but you have to admire the thought and creativity that Ihsahn puts into his solo material, and this is an album that's been steadily climbing for me, so don't be surprised if it's even higher ranked at the end of the year when I'm counting down my favorite albums altogether of 2024, but so far I wanted to put it near the top 5 here, so coming in at number 6, going to go with Self-Titled by Ihsahn. Just great stuff, and if you have not heard it, definitely go ahead and check it out. Top 5 now, I'm going with Hellfire and Damnation by Saxon. This has been a great year for the new wave of British heavy metal so far, and I'll get into more of that in a little bit, but Saxon are very quietly under the radar doing some of the best work of their careers on their last few albums, including Hellfire and Damnation. Really heavy stuff here on this record. Love the riffage as well. Biff Byford on lead vocals, he still got it. He still sounds great, and I just saw them live with Uriah Heep about a month or so ago, and the new stuff sounded killer live. Some standouts for me include the title track, Madame Guillotine is great, probably my favorite song from the record. There's Something in Roswell is very fun, and Fire and Steel as well. So just from top to bottom, a bruising album by Saxon, who are still doing fantastic work, 40 years or so into their careers, even though a lot of it is lesser talked about and lesser appreciated, and they in general are one of the more, lesser appreciated new wave of British heavy metal bands who really couldn't, achieve that mainstream success in North America, but are still doing fantastic work, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. So number 5 here, going to go with Hellfire and Damnation to get us started in the top 5. Number 4, Dark Matter by Pearl Jam, who just released their best record since Backspacer, in my opinion, and I know not everybody loves modern day Pearl Jam, and I covered this album to death when it came out here on the channel, but it's just a great record as far as I'm concerned. The album has this big sound to it, and Eddie Vedder's older vocals, I think, lend themselves really nicely to some of the more softer, melodic, atmospheric tracks on here, and the drumming by Matt Cameron is just stellar throughout this entire record. So, for me, I love this album. I think definitely, their best since Backspacer from 2009, so best in 15 years as far as I'm concerned. Some standouts here include Scared of Fear, React, Respond, Wreckage, which is very Tom Petty-esque, but I enjoy it. Probably my favorite on the record. upper hand, running, something special, got to give, and Setting Sun is a great album closer. So top to bottom here, this album is great. It's all been played live already by the band, and all of them, take really well to a live setting. So that's another plus here. Dark Matter by Pearl Jam. They sound fantastic. They sound rejuvenated and energized in the studio, with Andrew Watt producing this album, really accentuating that big sound the band really needed on this album. So I enjoy it a lot. I wanted to put it in the top 5 here. Going to go with Dark Matter by Pearl Jam at number 4. Top 3 now, Swallowed by Hell by Morbid Saint. Just an absolutely bruising, heavy, thrashy album by Morbid Saint, released earlier this year. And, there are a lot of these classic thrash bands, man, that are doing some of the best work of their careers right now. Bands like Exodus and Testament, Overkill, and Morbid Saint as well. Just putting out great album after great album at this stage in their careers. Flotsam and Jetsam as well, who have a new album coming out later on this year. I'm looking forward to it. But this is one to crank up all the way for sure. It's a mind-melting record from beginning to end, with tracks like Rise from the Ashes, Bloody Floors, Burn Pits, probably the best song on the record as far as I'm concerned. Bleed Them Dry too. If you've maybe fallen off of Morbid Angel, haven't listened to them in a while, they've fallen off your radar, I definitely recommend you check out this album. Very fun, very heavy. They sound full of energy as well. Definitely my favorite thrash release of 2024 thus far, and so I definitely had to include it in the top 3. Speaking of bands who sound youthful and energized in the studio here, Judas Priest and Invincible Shield is a great album. This album really sounds like a combination of, I'd say, Firepower from 2019 and Painkiller, kind of combining those two sounds, that modern Priest sound with probably their heaviest record, in Painkiller. So putting them together here, you got some great results. Of course, Glenn Tipton's playing is limited on this record because of his current condition. KK Downing no longer in the band, but you have the guitar work of Andy Sneap and Richie Faulkner, and they do a tremendous job. Richie Faulkner, one of those underrated guitarists in the business today, and does a great job here on this album. Really, shows off his prowess, in my opinion. And Rob Halford on lead vocals. I mean, the metal god has still got it. He still sounds incredible. I saw them on this tour a couple months ago. Great show. Rob Halford sounded great. The new stuff sounded really cool as well. And looking at the track listing here, Panic Attack, Serpent and the King. That's the best song in this album, in my opinion. Great stuff there. Invincible Shield, the fine title track. Devil in Disguise, Crown of Horns, As God Is My Witness is really heavy. Trial by Fire. Then there's a bonus track, not included on this CD version, but on the deluxe edition. I believe on the vinyl, as a matter of fact. And it's called The Lodger. That's got to be one of my favorite Priest songs of the last 10 years. Great song, great deep cut there, considering it didn't even make the main album, the main CD, but really great song. Overall, a tremendous album here. Rob Halford has still got it. He sounds great. The metal god, really leading Judas Priest at this point and doing some fantastic work. Definitely some of their best in their, post-reunion era now, since Angel of Retribution from 2005, and so I really enjoyed this album, and it would be my number 1 if not for this one release. And that one release is the Mandrake Project by Bruce Dickinson. Just a general rule of thumb on the channel, Maiden are my favorite band of all time. Any year where Iron Maiden or Bruce Dickinson put out a new album, it's going to be my favorite of the year. Just a spoiler there. Bottom line, Bruce Dickinson is my favorite vocalist of all time, and it was so great to finally have new Bruce Dickinson solo music in 2024. Came out in this, I believe it came out in March. Great album here by Bruce. Really a lot of thought and effort and time put into this album, into the concept, and a lot of really deep lyrics here by Bruce as well. He's kind of become, he really feels like he's been bitten by a radioactive Bruce Dickinson now. He's really, become a caricature of himself in some respects, but in other respects, he's still doing incredible work in the studio. Afterglow of Ragnarok is fantastic. Many Doors to Hell, Rain on the Graves is a fantastic song. I mean, the chorus is so powerful, and he recently performed it with a symphony, which I heard on YouTube. It sounds really great. So I do hope Bruce comes to North America and tours this album, because I have to hear some of this stuff live, and it's always great to hear Bruce Dickinson in concert. Resurrection Men is great. Eternity Has Failed, the original version, If Eternity Should Fail, which would end up on the Book of Souls album by Iron Maiden, but this is the original version, and I gotta say, I think I like that version, this version better than the one that made it onto Book of Souls, just my opinion, but they're both great. Then you have Sonata, Immortal Beloved. I mean, that is an amazing way to close out the album, in my opinion. An epic here by Bruce Dickinson. Just so many great lyrical themes converging on that track, and his vocals, really dramatic and atmospheric. I just love that song to death. This album, in my opinion, is top to bottom. It's great stuff, and pretty much exactly what I was hoping for from Bruce Dickinson at this stage in his career. It's, it's introspective, it's deep, it's got, these progressive elements as well. It's heavy at times. There are these great vocals and really atmospheric parts. It's pretty pretty much exactly what I thought Bruce was going to do, and he delivered, in my opinion. So, the Mandrake Project, stellar album here by Bruce Dickinson. I'd probably put this album maybe as his third best solo record behind Chemical Wedding and Accent of Birth, but his best solo album in many years, definitely better than Tyranny of Souls, which was also a great album, 2005, but we waited all this time for new Bruce Dickinson music, and now finally we have it, and the Mandrake Project is just stellar. So, like I said, my favorite of 2024 so far, and I honestly don't see that changing, throughout the rest of the year, but obviously I'll keep my ears open. But again, whenever there's an album by Bruce Dickinson or Iron Maiden, it's usually going to be towards the top of the list. So, for number 1 here, let's go with the Mandrake Project by Bruce Dickinson. So, that wraps up this list here, taking a look at my 15 favorite new releases of 2024 so far. Seeing that we're in the month of June now, I thought I would share my personal favorites of the year, so far. So, wanted to share that here today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you don't miss a new upload, and let me know down in the comment section below what are some of your favorite releases of 2024 thus far. I want to hear from you. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.